Hi there. There's been a little bit of discussion on the channel recently regarding the selection process. What I thought I'd do today is actually trying to expand on my selection process, keeping in mind that these things need to be flexible. But what I'm trying to do in this test today is to look for runners that hopefully will CHOB. But if I don't actually find any runners, or the runners that I identify I don't fancy as being chobbers, I will then go in and lay Dutch them. So in other words, what I'm trying to do is find a selection process that will not only help in the actual picking of the horses, but also in the decision-making process as to which strategy to use. So let me just run through what I've been doing today. I've been going off to my usual first port of call, i.e. Naps Checker. I've been looking for a consensus of opinion amongst the tipsters, looking for the most favoured runner and the second most favoured runner, and then I'd nip to Timeform, check their dobbing potential, or their dobbing history I should say, and try and make an assessment over whether one of or the other will dob, or more specifically, be a useful CHOBbing candidate. Now, if there's no major distinction between the two, rather than CHOBbing, what I've been doing is actually taking those picks and Dutch laying them. In addition to that, sometimes the picks are, there's only one pick, I should say, one favoured runner, and of course what you often find is that's a very short price favourite, and the intention is to lay that favourite, but only if it's a handicap race. I don't like laying favourites, short price favourites, in novice races or beginners chases and that type of thing. But certainly in handicaps, I've always been of the opinion that if the handicapper was doing his job properly, you should never have an odds-on favourite. Unfortunately, however, there hasn't been such a race where there's been an odds-on favourite in a handicap, so I've got no example of that. So as you can see, the results have been, well, they started off great, and then I hit a run where I've had a few losers, unfortunately. So as this race is running along, this is a Dutch lay that I've done here, looking for £25 to get out. And once this one's finished, which it looks like it's going to be a loser as well, what I'll do is I'll let you see the process I've been going through for the Beverly race. I've already identified the Beverly race as being a Dutch lay, but I'll let you see that in action, as it were, and let you see how I've been going about doing things. So if I just pull up Naps Checker and Timeform, looking at the next race at Beverly. So you'll see here that we've got How Bizarre is the most popular pick, but it's only got 4 selections. And similarly, Back from Dubai only has 4 selections. Now, ideally, what I'd like to see is the favourite having at least 5 tipsters tipping that runner. So the 2 that I'm going to consider is How Bizarre and Back from Dubai. So we just quickly nip to Timeform. So it's the Beverly 7:45, sorry, 6:45, I beg your pardon. Okay, and we can just quickly look at the dobbing performance. And as you can see down the BSP and the IP high-low columns, its dobbing performance isn't that great. Well, we've got 1 at the top and 1 at the bottom in the first 5. Historically, as I mentioned in a previous video in some comments, I'm not a great lover of going too far back with looking at the dobbing history. So I'm quite happy just to look at the first 5 while I've been doing this particular trial. So back from Dubai, and the other one was How Bizarre. And if we look at that one, if it will show me there we go. So in this one, we're looking at, we've got one way back in May, 5th of May, and that's it. So there's not much to choose between the two. So I don't feel confident in either of these horses being a potential CHOB. And consequently, they become a Dutch lay. So I'm going to set that up later on. I've already assigned the strategy just so that it appears in the watch list. But let me just run through that for the Brighton 9 o'clock as well. I haven't done this one as yet. So let's just pull up the spreadsheet, the web browser again. So Brighton 9 o'clock, or 7 o'clock I should say. So we are looking at Red Alert's got the most picks, and then Minhaj has 3. When I'm picking the second runner, he has to have at least 3. I ignore all other runners who have only been selected once or twice. If there's a couple of runners that have got 3, I'll pick both of those. So we may end up with a list of 3 runners that I need to analyse. So again, let's just nip into, what was it, Brighton at 7 o'clock. And we're looking at Red Alert, which is, let me see, 1, 2, got 3 selections there that I've dobbed, or 3 dobbs it in the past. And the other one is Minhaj. And we've got none. So on the face of it, we might be looking at Red Alert being a potential CHOB. Let me just clear those away. Red Alert. See, Red Alert's too low in the odds, though. That's the problem. I wouldn't consider doing any short price runner as a CHOB unless they're over 2.5 at the absolute minimum. But even then, I certainly wouldn't consider them as a potential dob, really. So in this particular case, I'd be looking at Dutch laying the top 2, Red Alert and Minhaj. So again, if we just check the figures, if I was to Dutch lay them, so you can see the profit is going to be quite high. So the automation to use would be the max liability one. So that's added into the list, and once it's near the time, I'll go back in and actually submit the corresponding bets. Let me just check the next one. I'm hoping to find a CHOB at some stage, so let you see that. So if we select Beverly at 7:15, once again, quickly nip to that. So Beverly 17, what have we got? Right, the obvious one here is California Gem. Those are non-runners, and that's the only one that's got multiple picks. We've got 2 here, but as I said earlier, I discount anything that's either got 1 or 2 only. So that's likely to be a CHOB. Now, in actual fact, that's what I'll be doing. What I haven't flagged up to you already is that if there's only one selection that's the main pick from the tipsters, and there's only one of them, I will CHOB it anyway, irrespective of its dobbing history. But let's go in and check its dobbing history anyway. So we're looking at California Gem. And certainly over its past 5 races, we're only looking at 2 back in October last year, 18th and 12th of October last year. The other ones, they're not DOBs, but certainly the top two have come in enough to match our cover bet at 25% offset. So I'm quite happy to CHOB this one. So let me just clear those out of the way, and I shall assign that as a CHOB. And that was California Gem. Okay, I'll zip on and let you see those races in action. Okay, the runners are just loading at the moment, so let's run through and put in our Dutch lay, which was between How Bizarre and back from Dubai. I'll submit this once we hit the scheduled off time in a couple of seconds. Okay, and because our max profit is 60 quid or 59 pounds, what we should be doing is greening up for 15 quid, all being well. Okay, we're off and running, so we'll just let that run along in the background. As I say, we should be greening up for about 15 pounds in this race. As you can see from the watch list here, started off really well, and I've had a terrible run since 4 o'clock, which has been a bit disappointing. In order to build up a bit of a data set, I haven't been filtering races like I normally would. So for example, you'll see a number of races with fairly large fields, which are races I tend not to get involved with normally. Similarly, you'll find races in there with, for novice races, for example, which again are races I tend not to get involved with, especially if there's a short price favourite. And but having said that, if you scan down that list, you'll see some successful novice races, you'll see some failed novice races. And yeah, I guess it's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. But it's really there just to build up some sort of picture as to whether this technique is of any use. So there you see we've successfully traded out, and indeed back from Dubai, one of our picks looks like it's going to go on to win. Okay, so we'll skip ahead to the next race. Right, on to the 7 o'clock, and if you recall, the Dutch lay is between the top two in the market, which is, on the face of it, a bit risky, but we're looking to get out for £25 out, and hopefully, because these runners are so low in the market, they won't need to move that much for us to actually get that £25. So again, I shall just wait until these things start loading and submit the bets. Okay, into the race. Hopefully this should be matched fairly quickly. It's a 6 furlong race, so it won't take that long. And there we go, that's it being triggered. We just need it to match out. Excellent. That's exactly what we wanted. Okay, so we'll move on to the next one, which has actually already been pre-configured with our selection California Gem. So I'll get back to you when this race is underway. Okay, we're off and running at Beverly in the 7:15, and you'll see the cover bet and double bet have been submitted. So we're looking to get out for 4.5 to give us a scratch trade if it loses. Doesn't look very promising at the moment though. No, California Gem isn't that much of a gem. So the CHOB selections have actually been quite disappointing today, to be perfectly honest, and it may well be that the selection method I'm using simply isn't good enough. I mean, we only had two in the first half of the first couple of hours, which was nice and successful, those 2 hours. But since then, everything has gone a little pear-shaped, and this one is no exception. Very disappointing. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to carry on for the rest of the evening, carrying on with this. I'll come back to you for the last race at Brighton at 9 o'clock. Hi there, right, you come back to me in time for the 8:30 at Brighton. Unfortunately, the pick Cloudy Rose is far too short, so I'm just going to come out of this one. Don't want anything to go in there. I would have been prepared to do it if it had gone up above 2.5, which means at 2.5 the cover bet goes in at 2. So I will be prepared to take it that, but not when it's away down at 2.2. That's a waste of time. So in actual fact, I've missed out this race and the previous race, the one at Beverly, the 8:15. The main selection from that checkout had been withdrawn, and what was left was poor fare. I didn't fancy them for either a CHOB or a Dutch lay. So we'll move on to the next race. Okay, this may well be the last race, as the selection in the final race of the evening is actually below 2.5. The plan was to CHOB letter of the law. If it drifts above 2.5, I'll give it a go, but this one might be the last. So you can see that we are CHOBbing Daddy's Angel. So I'll come back to you once this race is underway. Right, off and running, and you can see we need to cover at 2.92. So as you watch the numbers bounce up and down, you can see the results that we've got for today. I've had a decent set of 3 results in the evening, which has brought my losses back into some sort of sensible position. Hopefully this one will get us more or less a scratch for the day. But yeah, the whole purpose of this exercise today was to see if I could come up with a selection process that would allow me to identify CHOBs relatively quickly, but also at the same time, if anything wasn't a likely CHOB, turn it into a potential Dutch lay. That hasn't come out to plan. Great start, as I said earlier, but since then it's been a bit hit and miss, to say the least. Although I've had a nice wee run at Brighton and Beverly this evening. But we'll see how this race finishes up. As I say, we need 292 for a cover bet to be taken and give us a scratch trade. Let's trying desperately to get there. There we go. Right, so this is a scratch trade. Hopefully this will come down to what, 1.9 or thereabouts, but it doesn't look like it's going to, unfortunately. Come on. It'd be nice to finish the day with getting us almost into profit. There we go. Excellent. Right, so that's £53. So yeah, we're looking at what, £14 loss on the day. So it's been a really frustrating day. Certainly that 3-hour period in the late afternoon, early evening was very frustrating. But let me just switch to the one at Brighton. I'll keep an eye on this to see if it drifts a bit, allowing me to come into that. Okay, back to the last race, and Letter of the Law has drifted nicely, so hopefully that will CHOB. It's still a bit lower than I would like, but we'll go for it anyway, just since I'm in simulation mode and just for giggles. So that should go in about 2.72. There we go. So we need a cover bet going in at 2.04. Now, whilst that's busy doing its thing, let me just summarize what I was trying to do here today. Before I've been looking at the CHOBbing record of every single runner in a race, but that can be really tedious to do, not to mention time consuming. Ideally, the best way to do it would be programmatically, so it's easy enough to download the database files. The trouble is you need to tie in the horse ID in those database files to the horse ID for each race that's about to come up. Unfortunately, Betfair, as far as I'm aware, no longer provide free access to the developer API commands that allow you to interrogate things within the market, which makes it a bit more awkward to set that up. In any case, what the idea was to try and cut the amount of time down, but still be able to identify some potential chobbers. And that's our cover beta taken, so that's excellent. So identifying of chobbers, if that wasn't suitable in that it didn't flag any up, the idea was that it would then be able to use those same selections that weren't potential chobbers and use them in another strategy. And in this particular case, I chose Dutch laying. That may not have been suitable. As you can see, there's been some nice results from some of the Dutch lays, particularly early on in the day, but there's also been a few losers. And from that point of view, it's very much questionable whether what I've been doing today is something I would carry on with. But it's been a useful test, a useful experiment. But it just goes to show you how frustrating this game is, really. Having had a great start and then lost it all plus more. I think I got up to £200 or over £200 profit, and then eventually got to about 250 in the red before recovering it down to minus 14. And if you may have noticed in the background there, although we've scratched that, unfortunately, letter of the law didn't CHOB. There was plenty of time to trade out manually. I was too busy yabbering away. Anyway, hope you find that process useful. Like any other testing, it needs to be done over a much larger sample size than 26 markets. But I have seen enough today to tend to put me off that particular idea. Okay guys, thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you again another day. Cheers.